Hello, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Riordan, the Director of the Department of Building Inspection. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to ask questions, share your perspective, and offer your advice on how we can improve. Hearing from you is a critical part of our improvement efforts, and we are fortunate to have you as partners. Now we have important updates today about a program we're undertaking to cancel abandoned permits, upcoming planning code changes, PermitSF's 200-day achievements, a new solar permit, and a new addressing process. After that, we'll open up the floor to general questions and comments. But first, I've got some great news to share. In August, longtime San Francisco structural engineer David Kane joined DBI as our new Deputy Director for Permit Services, responsible for plan check, permit services, compliance programs, and code updates. David's expertise in seismic design, his background in private practice, his knowledge of San Francisco's building codes, and his experience as a permit applicant will provide valuable insight into our ongoing efforts to improve our processes and service. David, would you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Patrick. I'm David Kane. Many of you know me as a structural engineer who has been working in San Francisco for many years, and I'm really looking forward to bringing my experience as a longtime customer to help build upon and improve DBI. There's been a lot of great work happening over the past few years, and so I want to acknowledge Patrick and the rest of the team for the great work that's been going on, and I look forward to partnering with all of you out there in the community to continue to just build upon the work that's been done to make this a first-class permitting agency. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, David. Now I'll turn it over to DBI's data analyst, Megan Walsh-Shuey.
Hi, everyone. I am DBI's data analyst, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about a project we're working on to clean up the permit applications that are in our system that are expired but have not yet been issued. So in September, we started on a project to cancel more than 11,000 abandoned permit applications. So these are applications that have not yet been issued. They have passed the dates to which they can be worked on, both the expiration date and a potential extension date. And we have started by sending courtesy applications to the owners of these buildings. The applications have been moved into a suspended status, and 60 days after these letters go out, they will be moved into a canceled status. Next slide. We're first starting with the over-the-counter permit applications. Some additional criteria that were used to limit the number that we're working on are that they are not related to a complaint. So if the permit was to remedy a complaint within our system, we're going to hold on that and pass that off to our code enforcement section to look into before we cancel that permit. As I said before, they've exceeded both their expiration and extension timelines. They can no longer be worked on. And what that leads to is a body of applications that were all filed before July 11th, 2023, and none of them have had any activity since December 31st, 2024. If people would like to continue working on these applications, they need to file for a new permit. And any questions that you may have can be directed to DBI customer service. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan, for that very informative presentation. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly, and I'll be facilitating today's forum. Before we move into Q&A, here are a few quick instructions on how you can participate and ask your questions and provide feedback. If you're on your computer or using the Teams app, click the raise hand button at the top when you'd like to speak. And if you're calling in over the phone, press *5, and you can also type in your question directly in the chat here. When I call your name, please unmute yourself, click unmute in Teams, or press *6 if you're on the phone. And we ask that you please state your name and organization if you are representing one. With that, let's open the floor. Who would like to start us off with a question or feedback on this topic? Looks like we have one from GBA Incorporated. GBA Incorporated, feel free to unmute and ask us your question.
For me? Can you
You're
hear
cut
me?
off. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. This is David Penn with GBA. Happy to be here. Totally understood this effort. I think it's long overdue. It's great to see it's happening. Hope it results in a bunch of cleanup and just a more cluttered-free permit environment. The only, I imagine that some of these notices are going to go out to owners who are not going to get them, not get them in time, not respond in time. And I guess my ask would just be on behalf of the applicant community is if the renewal process can be made, as easy as possible. Extensions are, quite easy in terms of process effort. And, if a renewal, for example, essentially requires, full re-permitting, that would be unfortunate and kind of defeat the purpose in some ways, in my opinion. So I just wanted to kind of voice that concern, full support for the effort. But, if there has been any thought to or can be some sort of thought to making the renewal process as easy as possible.
One thing I will note, and this is always a pretty tricky distinction, is that we're talking about permit applications. So these are applications that have been filed. They may have had some degree of plan check on them, but they have not yet been issued. So that pathway, generally, the code says that you can have an extension. There isn't necessarily a renewal for these. We would typically have a renewal on an issued permit where you have permission to start construction. So the reason that we've moved forward on these is because based on the amount of time that's elapsed, there really is no option in terms of extension. The permit will be canceled and you would have to start over. So unfortunately, that is the place with these. But because we're working with OTC, a lot of them didn't have a ton of plan check because people kind of come in and maybe walk away and don't finish much of their work.
Got it. I think I may have misunderstood that this was just applications, not
Yes.
issued permits. I appreciate the clarification.
Of course.
Great. Thank you, David, for your question. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Or in the chat? All right, there will be more opportunities later for questions. Thank you so much, Megan. We are now moving on to the next presenter, Rich Sucre from the Planning Department, who will be presenting on the PermitSF legislation updates.
Great.
Rich, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Sucre, the Deputy Director of Current Planning for San Francisco Planning, and I am going to walk you through some of our updates that have happened to the planning code as part of PermitSF. Next slide. So one of the first significant aspects that has been refined is that we now allow accessory structures in your rear yard up to 10 feet in height and covering no more than 120 square feet. And then we also let you have a 1-foot roof eave. This basically includes the sheds that are within the required rear yard or areas. These structures may not have bathrooms or may not include sleeping quarters or full kitchens, but they can have bathrooms or wet bars within them. They are basically also allowed within the side or rear of the building. Next slide. So this is a shift in our previous rules, which only allowed you to go up to 8 feet in height, but now we allow, again, 10 feet in height and up to 120 square feet in size. Next slide. Another significant piece of legislation is a refinement to our non-complying structures legislation in Planning Code 188. In short, we have staircases and portions of buildings that exist within our required rear yard or within the side yard. And oftentimes we realize that applicants need to upgrade these buildings. Previously, we would have required a variance from the planning code to basically demolish these aspects and then these portions of the building and then rebuild them. Now with the new changes in our law, you can basically still move forward with these and basically rebuild them. They might still trigger neighborhood notice, in most cases, or in some cases, and you still have to apply and comply with any applicable building requirements. Next slide. Just to be clear, interior changes like remodeling or change of use don't consist of intensification in these cases. And basically, we would only govern the portions that are within the buildable area. Next slide. So our bar for looking at these structures is basically whether or not they were built before 2003. And so we have a system in-house that allows us to look at your particular sites to see if the construction or if the portion of your building existed before then. Next slide. The other portion of our rules that have been updated is refinement to what we used to call our CB3P program. And so now we have priority processing for certain commercial uses. So now it's kind of been rebranded. This is our expedited conditional use authorization process. We now allow for formula retail uses under 20 locations. So if your formula retail use has 20 locations or more, you would still file a regular conditional use authorization. If it's less than 20 locations, you can file the priority processing application. A pre-application meeting is not required, and cannabis retail does not qualify for this priority processing program. Next slide. Our temporary use authorizations have also been updated. So we have done a much better job of clarifying the timeframes that are allowed. In short, we're allowing for a lot of pop-up retail and temporary activations, particularly within our downtown core. We've also added a line for seasonal political campaign offices, obviously for elections and such, as well as to have temporary structures and uses for construction projects that last over a certain, for basically large-scale projects that might not be in the immediate adjacency. So our temporary use application online has been updated, so you can find all of that information on through our website. Next slide. The last item to note is just that with a lot of the changes that have happened in PermitSF, we have been refining lots of our handouts. So we are getting ready to issue our new residential deck handout, storefront gates and the mechanisms, basically, which now only apply to historic buildings, zoning administrator interpretations, as well as our applications. And so we're happy to answer any questions at any time. You can email us at our general email at pic@sfgov.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, for that wonderful presentation. Does anyone have any questions or feedback for Rich? All right, looks like David has a question. Take the floor.
Presentation. This is really my only feedback that I just wanted to provide you here in this forum, Rich, was, and I think this is more of a legislative change that would be required, but regarding the formula retail requirements for CUA, if there was any consideration that could be made to the intensification clause around the number of units, the number of locations. For example, I'm thinking of some projects where a formula retail operator who has 120 locations, and they abandon one of those locations, and that location is taken over by a formula retail operator that has 130 locations. So it's just 10 more. And if some sort of, if some sort of consideration could be made around the intensification in those particular cases, the point being, what is the intensification between 120 and 130 location formula retail operator?
And Rich, I'm happy to jump in and answer that. This is Liz Waddy, Director of Current Planning with Planning. Just so you know, there is a piece of legislation that has been introduced by Supervisor Milliger's office relating to formula retail uses. It has not yet gone to the Planning Commission, but it does address many of those issues. It is a very extensive bill. I'm happy to drop it in the chat here so that folks have access to that ordinance number so you can review what's in it. But it should cover some of those issues at least in part. So I'll drop that in. But this ordinance did not address formula retail.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Do we have any other questions? All right, let's move on. Thank you, Rich. Next up, we have Liz Waddy from the Planning Department, who will be talking about the PermitSF Day 200 overview. Take it away, Liz.
Thanks. And now I'm going to put on my other hat as Director of PermitSF. We'll go to the next slide. So today, I just wanted to give everyone an overview of our Day 200 sprint for PermitSF. As a reminder to those of you, if it's your first time listening to this forum, as part of Mayor Lurie's PermitSF initiative, we are doing 100-day sprints of basically process improvements relating to the permitting process. We are focusing primarily on reforming elements of the permitting process that are not necessarily policy driven, but are more sort of clunking up the process, that are pain points in the process, are policies that are no longer sort of serving us or no longer at sort of the forefront, duplicative efforts, things that are in conflict with state law, things along those lines, just trying to make the permitting process faster, more seamless, and listening to all of you in forums like this about where you guys are still experiencing pinch points in the permitting process to see how we can make smooth those things out. So what Rich just went over was day 100. Many of those items were introduced in around Memorial Day. They became effective by the end of summer. What I'm going to talk about today is our day 200 sprint. So day 200 of PermitSF was right around Labor Day in early September. So these were all introduced then, and they are now working their way through the legislative process, depending on legislation and the agency that is carrying them. They may or may not need to go to commission hearings first. For example, some of the planning commission ones will need to go to the planning commission. Others will just go straight through the land use hearing process and onto the board of supervisors. So anyhow, we wanted to give a preview of those items and let you know that they're working their way through the process, and we hope that they will be effective and changing law by I would say, November at the latest, sometime in November. So first up, some of the items that we're focused on for day 200 aren't legislative in nature, though. And so on this first slide, we're highlighting the customer experience items that we are improving. First up, enhancing over-the-counter permitting. We hear from all of you all the time that over-the-counter permitting works really, really well. And so anything we can do to leverage that process or to have more projects go through that quick review and approval process, we know there's a big benefit of having that certainty of knowing that you're going to get your permit approved in a short amount of time. And so we really evaluated processes that were not currently fully over the counter, and any of those that we could push down into that bucket. And so 3 primary ones that we wanted to highlight for you. First, restaurant remodels for sort of small occupancy, so 49 and fewer occupancy load. Those are now entirely over the counter. 3-story connected 3-story commercial office tenant improvements will now be fully processed over the counter. And in addition, Department of Public Health is now offering recheck appointments as well. Many of those are for small restaurants that they need to come back. But just the idea of enabling people to be able to come back and complete their service rather than instantly, punting somebody to intake if their permit can't be completed in the first review. Second up, the solar permitting process. We will go into more detail on that later, but especially with the fact that tax credits are going away by the end of the year, tax rebates, we wanted to make sure that we would accommodate anyone who wanted to get solar permitting done in this last half of the year. We wanted to make sure we were able to track that and have a more efficient process, so more to come on that. We've also added an internal protocol. I think this is one that's really helpful for folks on this call to know. We, as part of day 100, we improved performance metrics to let everyone know that we are not now entirely as a city family, as it relates to permitting, having the intake process. We have a 21-day performance metric, a plan check. We have a 30-day performance metric, and revisions. We have 14 days. Part of the feedback we heard on that was sort of a concern of, are there unintended consequences that will come from that, where people will just, city staff will just keep sending plan check letters ad nauseum and will never get out of this endless loop because they're hitting their 30 days, but they're not giving a comprehensive review. So we heard that concern. So in part, in response to that, we created an internal protocol that basically said after 3 plan checks, there's clearly some miscommunication or some issue at play here. So after 3 rounds of plan checks, we have all city agencies have adopted a protocol to basically escalate to management and to help facilitate either an in-person or on Teams call to help resolve and sort of get to the heart of the issue. Next up, we also heard from customers that there was a bit of frustration as folks were typically going through the intake process, that the city would often ask for information like a reference set of plans or things of that nature that the city already has in their possession. And so we've implemented similarly a protocol to not require materials from applicants that we ourselves as the city family can go hunt down requests from records management, et cetera. And then last but not least, many of you have probably gone through the interdepartmental project review process. It is triggered typically for projects that are 8 stories and above or on liquefaction zones. We have heard from you. We have also decided ourselves that these meetings are not terribly fruitful. They often are a large point of frustration, I think, for many staff. And in researching it, we just decided that there was no utility in that meeting anymore. And so we are simply going away with the meeting. We are ending the process of interagency project reviews. Now, this doesn't mean you can no longer request to meet with the building department or the planning department or other agencies if you have questions, but it's no longer this mandatory meeting that is a gating requirement to filing a permit. Next slide, please. Turning to the legislative side of Day 200, we have a couple important amendments to various codes that we wanted to highlight. You've probably heard about most of these, but we're amending both the planning, building, public works, and public health codes. With final votes are likely going to be in October and November, again, depending on whether they have to go to commissions or not. First up, it is removing the Local Slope Protection Act in the building code. From our research, this will be saving applicants an average of $24,000 in 4 months of time by not having to go through that redundant review. And as a reminder, there is still the state requirements for Slope Protection Act. Those are still very much in play. This was just an additional duplicative local process that did the same thing. Secondly, we are amending the planning code to allow people to park in their driveways. This previously was not allowed. And we have about 132 active enforcement cases, so those will all be closed once this legislation goes into effect. We are also in the planning code expanding the number of land uses that are permitted within historic buildings. Effectively, we basically call this like an incentive program for our historic structures. We know our historic buildings are sort of jewels within the city, but they are also sometimes sort of funkier buildings, harder to fill, have greater constraints in their physical nature. And so our idea here was to loosen the zoning rules around what can go inside so long as the buildings are preserved to moving forward to allow for that. And then last but not least, for an item to highlight here is installing commemorative plaques. Currently requires many hearings. We are reducing the number of hearings to hopefully streamline the process to install commemorative plaques and make that a simpler, more straightforward process. Next slide. I think this is the last item I just wanted to hit. It's been mentioned in the news. We have also selected a new software vendor who will be replacing ultimately DBI's permit tracking system, their software system. It will be replacing the planning department's Excella software system. It will be bringing along the fire department onto the same system, it'll be connecting with all of the other agencies as well. So it'll still connect with the health department's work. It will connect with anyone, PUC, Public Works, et cetera. It will be connecting and joining in all city agencies so that when you go through the permitting process, you have a contemporary software system that's giving you a status tracker, doing all of those great things. So we're really excited about that. We are about to kick off the work. We hope to be, we will be rolling out different types of permits that are leveraging the new system starting in February. So stay tuned. We should be having more announcements in early 2026 around what that first batch will be. And the important thing I want to highlight is before we move forward with each phase of rolling this out, we will be doing a lot of outreach. Folks that are on calls like this will definitely be groups that we want to tap and get feedback from, and hear from all of you. So maybe this will just be my plug. If there are any processes in particular that you've either experienced in other cities that work really well, or that you just feel would be really well served by being in a more contemporary digital system, you think it would be great, feel free and let us know, ping us. We want all of the ideas. That goes for PermitSF as a whole. We want to hear from you. A lot of these ideas have come from folks like you already. And with that, I think that is my last slide. Let's see. Oh, just to plug, we have a QR code. This is the place. You're welcome to communicate directly with us with feedback, but also if you click on this QR code or go to the link here, sfgov/permitsf, excuse me, there's a place you can click in to submit feedback. We really want to encourage you to use that, share feedback. If you're ever stuck in a permitting process, getting frustrated, we want to hear all the stories. It doesn't mean we will always end up reforming those processes, but we really want to understand where customers are experiencing pain points in the process and see how we can help fix that. And with that, that ends my presentation for day 200.
Awesome, Liz. Thank you so much for your presentation. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Liz? Looks like we have one from Serena Calhoun. Serena, please unmute your mic and take it away with your question.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's super exciting to see these changes happening. As you know, I'm a big fan. I wanted to just ask for something that I hope is relatively simple. I've submitted some ideas to the PermitSF website, and then I don't get a copy of what I submitted, and so I am forgetting what I have submitted. I don't want to send you the same thing multiple times. So I did get an email saying like we received it, but it doesn't have a copy of the message that I sent, so that would be really helpful.
Great suggestion. I am sure somebody on our technology side can help figure that out. In the meantime, we can forward you back what you sent to us so you specifically have it, but we'll look into whether we can have that be part of the reply, the auto reply.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Liz.
Great. Thanks, Serena. Any other questions from the audience? Let me check the chat. All right. Looks like that's it. Thank you, Liz. Okay, next up on our agenda is a new solar permit and process, which will be presented by Bruce Uke from the Department of Building Inspection. Bruce, take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Bruce Uke. I'm a project manager with the Management Information Systems Division within DBI, and as you've heard from Liz's presentation, we did make some changes to our solar permitting process. DBI and the SF Fire Department have introduced a new digital solar permit. We call this the S permit, S for solar. The solar permit applications are submitted exclusively online through our online contractor portal. The application is reviewed concurrently in Bluebeam by all the relevant city departments. And depending on the scope of work, qualified contractors can still obtain permits for solar installations by applying for building and electrical permits or by using the Solar App Plus application. Next slide. The most important part here is sf.gov/get-solar-permit for all of the instructions and applicable forms. These will be available to you along with dedicated step-by-step permitting processes on this web page. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention and your interest in what we're doing here at DBI.
Thank you, Bruce. Do we have any questions about solar permitting in the audience? Looks like we've got one from Victoria Osman. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if you see permits come through in the next 30 days, say, can you give me an estimate on whether or not those permits will likely be approved or what your current process timeline looks like?
That is a bit of an open question because there's lots of factors that can go in with that. So unfortunately, I can't give you a generalized time frame, but I think if anybody from fire or perhaps David Kane's team might want to address that.
Hi, so I'm Kathy Harold with the fire department. So solar plans that we're getting, we're assigning them for review. Done about 5 business days for the review to start. So to answer your question, that any permit that the fire department gets, yeah, will be reviewed within that 30 days. But we're getting them turned out faster than that.
Yeah, thanks,
So-
Kathy. And similar on the DBI side, we are reviewing them within a matter of a few days. So yes, should be getting them out well within 30 days.
And I will tell
Okay,
you
great.
this, that the SF fire inspectors and the DBI electrical inspectors are doing a groundbreaking and pretty innovative new process for the inspections, where they are coordinating the inspections so that both the fire and the electrical inspectors will appear at the job site at the same time. So so we are looking forward to that being a success.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you.
Actually, can I address that, Bruce?
Yes.
We are working with sorry, I'm Matt Green, Deputy Director for Inspection Services at DBI. So we are working with the fire department trying to do joint inspections. So if you do want a joint inspection, meaning electrical inspector and fire inspector at the same time, you would call the fire department and let them know. And then the fire department will contact us and get our electrical inspector out there. So it's not every inspection is going to be a joint inspection, but if you do want one, mention that to the fire department when you call for their inspection.
My apologies, Matt.
Great. Thanks, you all. Was that helpful, Victoria? Oh, in the chat you say, great,
Yeah.
thank you. So if that's true, we should be able to get a permit before the end of the year.
Is that accurate? I mean, is that possible? If we submit in 30 days from today, for example?
I would guess so. Again, there's a lot of factors that that are dependent on what the application is.
Yeah, I know there's probably hundreds of people that are filing right now, right?
Yes, yes, and they're moving
Okay.
through.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the more code compliant your plans are when they get submitted, the faster the review will be done. So if your plans are code compliant, fire will be able to review them. Yeah, we'll be able to review them before the end of next month.
Great, thank you. Someone named August Goers asks, is that 30 calendar days or business days?
I think in the context of this discussion, we're talking about on average.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a question from Janine Cotter.
Great, thank you. With the end of, I think you all understand that with the end of the tax credit at the end of this year, we have to have all of our residential systems built before the end of the year. So that's why you're seeing such a crush of permit requests. So I want to thank the department for moving on this and figuring out a way that we can track where things are at. I think it's really helpful, and I appreciate the work that's been put in this. Also concerned because it's a new process and we're we're at the end of the year. Matt, I just wanted to make sure that I understand on the inspection side as well. So when we call for inspection, if we request for a dual inspection, fire will coordinate with electrical and it'll be a one-time inspection?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We've done a couple, pilot program the last couple of weeks. Working, they'll reach out to us, and our senior electrical inspectors will arrange for electrical inspectors to be there at the same time.
So if we have, forgive me.
Oh no, I'm sorry. What was your question?
The question is for fire permits, since passing a fire inspection is a condition precedent to being able to get an electrical inspection. We have fire inspections on the schedule right now, and they're, when we call, we're getting them in sort of like mid-October. So do we call the fire inspector that scheduled the inspection to request they talk with electrical for existing?
And they're working
scheduled?
directly with the electrical inspectors to arrange the joint inspections.
Okay, so even stuff that's already on the books, we can call back and say, please include both?
Yes, I mean, I've talked to you for DBI, but we're ready to meet you out there with the fire inspector. So yes.
I appreciate that, because one rather than two inspections is certainly better. Thank you. Thanks very much.
You know, the ideal situation is that you pass both inspections at that time, and then we'll close the permit. If you know, you don't pass fire inspection, you're not going to pass electrical inspection either.
But presumably we would, I mean, hopefully we always build and design to pass the inspection.
Of course.
But yeah, no, absolutely. But presumably if you have an electrical and fire inspection at the same time, to the extent that there are corrections by fire and there are corrections by electrical, you'll hear both of them at the same time.
That's the plan, yes.
Awesome. Fabulous. I really appreciate that process improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. And thanks, Matt. Do we have any more questions for Bruce? Let me check the chat. All right. Thank you, Bruce. Next up on the agenda, we have Patrick Hannon, who will be speaking about the new San Francisco addressing process. Patrick, take it away.
Good afternoon. Like Kelly said, I'm Patrick Hannon, the Communications Director here at the Department of Building Inspection. Next slide, Kelly. We're announcing today that we have a new citywide addressing process. This is the result of a cross-departmental working group that's been plugging away to improve the addressing process for about 5 years. They came up with an entire life cycle process, so that goes from project approval all the way through demolition, and have formalized the process in an information sheet, which is available on our website, information sheet A01. Next slide, Kelly. Really, what's changed is went from a semi-formal process to a very formalized process in which every department's roles laid out, what they do, and what the applicant needs to do at each step along the way. It's broken into phases, and like I said, it goes through the entire life cycle of a building. The other big change is that all address requests, they require a building permit, but they now require this address request form. And no longer are we going to be requiring an M permit or issuing an M permit for address changes. If you're doing construction, you would just submit this form along with your building permit application. If you're not doing construction, you'll just submit this form and our staff will actually fill out the application on your behalf. Next slide, Kelly. One of the things we really want to do is we wanted to make it really clear what you were required to do and what the city was going to do at each step in the way, because multiple departments are involved in this. If you're changing a property line, Public Works wants to make sure that the maps are correct and that the new street map is established. The assessor recorder is going to want to record the new parcel onto the tax rolls, and we're going to want to assign an address that aligns with that parcel. And so in the information sheet is this flow chart that lays out exactly where, depending on where your building is in its life cycle, and where you need to get on an address, whether if it's at the planning approval or a little later in the process. Next slide. This is all laid out with clear instructions on a new dedicated webpage, SF.gov at building-address. It's a step-by-step page that features all the forms of information you need to apply for a new address. Next slide. And we did a soft launch of this way back in June. Well, not way back, but back in June. We wanted to make sure that we could test out the process and refine it if necessary along the way, given that this was a substantial change for us. We also took a look at the times, and in April, May of this year, it was taking us 13 days, and last October, November, we were at 11 days to assign a new permit. Under this new process, we're doing it in under 5 days. And that's without the new website and without the information sheet, which will help you guys even further in the process. So we know it works. We're excited to get started. And if you have any questions, happy to answer questions or give us your feedback as you go through the process. And we want to hear from you. And we want to hear if there's something we can do to make it better. We want to do it. Next slide. Thanks, Kelly.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Do we have any questions about our new addressing process? Let's check the chat. Oh, we've got a question from David. David, ask away. David, I can't hear you. All right, I'll come right back to you. Serena, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see this change. It has been extremely annoying to try to get addresses for a very long time. And the only person we could schedule with was Wei Fong. And, that was a challenge just schedule wise. I'm curious about whether or not you guys have also had internal conversations about correcting the database that you guys have for any missing addresses, like existing missing addresses, because that was something that came up for us a lot during the accessible business entry program, is that we would submit a checklist for a business and DBI would say, oh, we don't have that on our records. And then we would have to go through a really extensive adding the address process, and our clients would have to pay fees to simply, correct the city records. So I'm curious if there's been any conversations about that, or if that's part of this program as well.
I mean, what we've done is we have about 25% of all the questions we get about addressing and all the inquiries are related to whether an address is valid. So what we've done is we've put a tool, the SF PIM search tool, right up front so that people can check and see if their address is valid or not. If it's not valid, then it's really a question of whether a parcel exists and whether that parcel is associated with that address. And our staff would help with that. People figure that out once they got into it, Serena.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, like, at my business, okay, I have a 793, 795, 797. And the city DBI's records only recognize 793 and 795, but 797 has always been the primary address for the commercial space on the ground floor. And so that's kind of what I'm not talking about, like at a new parcel or a new building. I'm sort of talking about that kind of thing.
Well, I can check my colleagues and circle back, but to my knowledge, we wouldn't have a way of knowing what that address was associated with unless you were to come in and say, hey, I'd like to correct this.
Sure, but I guess my question is that something that the owner still would have to pay for to have the city to correct that record, or is it something that we can do sort of administratively?
Let me look into that and I'll circle back with you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Serena. Next, we have a question from David Ball from the chat here. Does this apply to corner properties that have multiple entry exits and you want to change the main address from one street to the other?
It would, yeah. I mean, basically, David, if you're moving a parcel, you're moving a wall, you're moving any sort of border for the property of the parcel, then this is the process that you would use to create the parcel, change the parcel, and associate the address.
Okay, thanks, Patrick and David. Let's circle back with David. David, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Can you all hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. One of the things I read in the update, the email that came out, Patrick, just before this meeting was for demolition permits, like Form 6 full demolitions. Are you going to be requiring is DBI going to be requiring a address form application to remove the address for that structure, or is that something that the city's just going to do with any Form 6?
No, you would submit the address request form to remove the address as well.
Okay, and that's something that that DBI is going to be asking for with a Form 6. That's going to be a new thing. Is that correct?
Correct. It would go with your demolition permit and probably with the building permit that you'd likely submit with the demo permit.
Right, right. Okay. And then the new address would just be part of the new construction permit. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We will issue it in association with that, but we would also want to make sure that the numbers, right, that the numbers line up for that street and for the other street. So I think we would have a little bit of work to do, David, to make sure that the numbers got laid out properly.
Okay. And then when would that be in effect for demo permits in process, or is that going to be just kind of moving forward as of today for any new applications?
I believe it's just moving forward as of today, but let me circle back with you on that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, David. Do we have any more questions for Patrick in the chat? No. All right. Now we are moving on to the Q&A and future topics section of the forum. Do we have any callers that want to ask questions or provide comments or suggestions for future public advisory forums? Just give it a up. All right. David, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm very verbose today. Thank you for entertaining me. One thing I just wanted to make this forum aware, I know that several city agencies are not always or typically part of this forum. It's great to have planning play such an active role here. Those updates are just wonderful. Thanks to Rich and Liz and everybody on all the wonderful work they've done. Kathy Harold is here from the fire department. That's amazing. DPW and DPH are not here, and there's a lot of friction in the permitting system related to those agencies as well. And one of the things I just kind of wanted to voice here is it would be great to get, and I'm working directly with Department of Public Health on this, but I just wanted to raise it here almost for visibility for you all and the general public, that it would be great to get some clarity from the Department of Public Health on when their review of a food facility is required. So the classic example is like an office micro kitchen. If I bring in my leftovers from last night and store them in the refrigerator, that does not require DPH review. If I bring in Costco muffins for everyone in the office, that does not require DPH review. But there's some ambiguity about if an office manager of the company I work for orders supplies from Costco and stores them in the pantry in a refrigerator, that would then require DPH review. Likewise with catering services, a lot of tenants in the city in the effort to lure people back into the office are wanting to provide more and more amenities. And many of those amenities include some sort of catered food service program. And there's been a lot of friction around what triggers DPH review and how those requirements can be met. So I just wanted to voice that here. If DPH, could join the call at some point, that would be, I think, really a valuable add.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, for your feedback. And if you want to send us your specific, oh, sorry.
I was just going to chime in. This is Liz Waddy. So with PermitSF, just to let you know that that is something that's been raised to us already and is something we're working on. Don't yet have a timeline or a commitment or if anything's going to change, but we've heard that issue and we are, as part of PermitSF, working with DPH on that very issue. So just
Great.
We're on it. We're on it.
You sure are. Thank you, Liz.
Sure.
Thanks, Liz. We have a question in the chat here from Chris, who has a question about re-roofing permit processes. Chris says, not sure if this is the appropriate form to ask, but for re-roofing permits on properties with a historical A designation, I would respectfully like to propose that when the scope of work is strictly re-roofing in kind with no alterations to the building's appearance, the permit plans be reviewed exclusively by the building department, bypassing planning department review. Currently, the planning department review process often consists of a limited assessment based solely on Google Maps to determine visibility from the street. This minimal level of review results in a half planning fee, which often amounts to hundreds to several thousands of dollars. And given the lack of design changes and the limited nature of the review, these fees place an unnecessary financial burden on applicants without meaningfully contributing to the preservation review process. Streamlining this process would not only reduce unnecessary costs for property owners, but also free up planning department resources to focus on projects that involve actual design or visible changes where their expertise is most valuable.
I think my Deputy Director, Rich Sucre, I think had to drop off this call, but just to flag for you, this is one of re-roofing is definitely something that we're hoping to look at to make the process more efficient. We know that the historic buildings are sort of our gap in what otherwise can be a really straightforward, simple process at DBI. So similar to my answer of the last one, this specific issue is one that we're looking at figuring out how we can streamline a bit more and again, put in the protections we need to make sure that our historic gems are protected, but move permits through that aren't impacting those. So don't have a super direct answer for you right now other than re-roofing and streamlining that process inclusive of historic buildings is something that's in the hopper, and hopefully by the early part of next year we'll have some updates for you on that.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Chris says thank you. Next, we have a question from Anne Cervantes. Anne, please unmute your mic and ask away.
Well, I just want to reiterate two speakers before this. He politely put it as friction between DPW and DBI and planning. Everything is really working well with DBI and planning. It runs very smoothly, but a lot of us get hooked up in DPW, and I hear a lot of complaints from my civil engineers that are doing curb cuts or really assessing what the path of travel is from a bus stop when there's a T-shaped street. So some of these, they could speed up the process, but I think that's where some of the hangups are. So I just wanted to state that if that could be resolved, that would be great in smoothing out the more of the permitting process. Thank you. Thank you for your good work.
Thanks for your feedback, Anne. All right, any other questions? Checking the chat here. Any raised hands? Last call for questions. All right. Well, thank you so much for attending today's PermitSF Customer Forum. The next forum will be on Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. Hope to see you all there, and thank you again for joining us today.